Alright, draft physics video, yes. Comments and such, probably. Mostly. Much, some. No, I shouldn't play it, but Day made a video asking a couple of stupid questions in his usual rude and snarky and stupid manner. So, I don't acknowledge his, I don't watch his other videos anymore. But I suppose the ones on physics I'll continue to respond to as long as he's not... Well, he already is. He's just obnoxiously rude and ignorant and he just slants and distorts all perspective, so there's just no point. But anyway, I'll do it anyway. I still haven't blocked Piero, so fuck. But this is, this is just such an outrageous lie. So here's Piero's comment. What's amazing is that by saying all physicists are part of a deceptive scam. So first, I've never said that. I've never called it a scam. I never implied it was a conspiracy. What the argument is they're slobs as scientists. They're homeless, dirty, stinking pigs. They don't know how to do their job. No conspiracy. They're just shitty scientists, as I've pointed out. They don't have any of Newton's discipline, and ironically will critique Newton, who actually did really great science. And it was actual science. It wasn't this make-up shit like dark matter. So anyway, there's absolutely no argument that they're all part of a deceptive scam, like they're being willfully deceptive. They're willfully disregarding having what's called evidence. Okay. Scam, claiming to have done experiments they've never done. So he keeps bringing up this done experiments they've never done. The only experiment I've claimed they haven't done is the silly, turn off the cameras on the photon watching thing, on the double slit. Turn the recorder off. Don't record the results, and the photons behave differently. I've claimed they've never done that experiment, and they haven't. That's a fact. So what are you talking about, liar? Why are you implying that I've done something, or I've said something inaccurate? Why don't you quote what I've said and demonstrate? Oh, it's just a troll. I know it. Hello?
God damn it. Don't see me like that. What do you want?
I love these people harassing. Yeah, I am the evil person. Yeah. Oh, sure I am. Anyway, claiming to have done experiments they've never done and reporting results which are opposite of an honest report. Well, like I said, it doesn't really require any honesty when they haven't even gone near analyzing the experiment at all. They're just taking it for granted. Just as I show all these people doing the double slit, and they take it for granted. They don't even look at the math and say, hey, wait a minute, if the slit width isn't in the math, then it can't be the double slit math. It has to be the single impediment math, because theoretically I could make the slits any size and I'm supposed to get exactly the same answer to the equation. So it's obviously an equation that has nothing to do with those two end sides at all. It just has to do with the thing in the middle. Now, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure that stuff out. Say, well, why are they talking about it in a certain context when their math doesn't even include the two parts of the slits? You can't really call it the double slit experiment when they're not slits anymore. I mean, simple things like that. And then you sit there, Piero presents evidence, like he makes claims like, well, they have an experiment proving that parameciums learn. You analyze the experiment, you find out, no, it doesn't really have a damn thing to do with parameciums learning. It just has to do with the fact that they have a very fast life cycle and you can evolve them. to have a certain behavior through evolution. Not learning, evolution. And then he presents, no, single slit diffraction is a known phenomenon. And he presents evidence that's completely manufactured with a diffracted source wave. It has nothing to do with an honest presentation. It's manufactured, forced. It is forced, okay, against its will. They force the the single slit to look like it doesn't look normally. What is that? If it's not dishonest, what is that? And that's the evidence he presents. Okay, you somehow don't think you are slandering these centuries of physics, of physicists. And again, which ones do I slander? Where did I slander Newton? Where did I even slander Huygens? Go ahead, find one I slandered somewhere by saying they said something, they were lying. I said something untrue about them. Go ahead, show that somewhere. You're lying about me right now. You're a liar. A fucking insanely preposterous, petty liar. And you just keep doing it. I mean, how many times do I have to show you lying? You know, yes, there's 4 upvotes for your lying about me. And so people are proud to defend lying. And clearly, so my argument's being defended. You're clearly all disinterested in the truth. You clearly support manufactured fake evidence. You clearly support sloppy descriptions of the evidence, preposterous exaggerations of the quality of the evidence, and you're saying that's good science. You're posting quotes from people who worked for the Pope's scientist. These are the people you're quoting. So I'm just saying, you're making my argument for me. It doesn't require a conspiracy. You're all fanatics. You're all devotees. You have no desire to hear anything challenging your God. Period. And it's that simple. You have a religious notion in your head and you just don't want to hear about evolution. No, that doesn't fit with my narrative of fun. You're making it obvious. It requires no conspiracy. You all have no fucking respect for the idea of pursuing the truth. Okay, enough of that jerk. Alright, so then the stupid hitman notoriety, who I'll block now because yes, there's just no point in like I said, I already explained how rocket engines work in a general manner, and I explained it a second time. No response to that explanation at all. Just more arrogant crap. Nothing to defend his insanely stupid accusations and assertions. So this is what, I mean, it's just amazing. Being one step ahead in the game, someone is considered genius. In the first place, how does anybody know that? Who are they considered genius by? You mean the people who are a step behind in the game? So the people who are stupid are deciding who's smart? Gee, that might be a logical mistake right there. That might be one of those push-pull things where you just didn't get off on the right start at all, did you? If you're waiting for the dumb people to qualify who's smart, well, you're probably in trouble. But being 2 steps ahead, someone is labeled a lunatic. Oh, is that one of your own brilliant quotes? So you're 2 steps ahead because you think millions of people lied about the entire history of science and the whole space program, and rocket engines can't work in space because there's no wall to push against. My logic is undeniable. There's no logic. You don't have anything called evidence or a fact. Without evidence or facts, you can't do logic, retard. You don't have any evidence or facts. Neither one of those are on your side. All the facts point to rockets working just fine in space, and your evidence that somehow those facts are in trouble is non-existent. And my ideas are mind-shattering. A paramecium's mind, maybe, right? Go talk to Piro. See me go smash a paramecium's mind. So anyway, Dennis Learjet. Stupid name, but let's see. So he asked a simple question. Why do you think rockets need to push against an atmosphere to move? Do you have any basis for that, or do you just think that they're lying to you because they're launched near the ocean and they take a parabolic flight? Well, I don't even know about the parabolic flight in some respects, because that's really just a consequence of the Earth moving some of that. So that has nothing to do with it. That's a relativity thing, which we'll get on to next. So anyway, just, I mean, he's just a obnoxious asshole making claims he can't defend with anything called a fact or a piece of evidence. So he's just a preposterous liar, a slanderer. I mean, you're just so fucking rude. I got nothing to say to you. Like I said, if you were lying about my father, I'd be suing your fucking ass off, you cunt. You stinking, lousy, rotten piece of shit. So yeah, fuck off. Get what you deserve, buddy. Man. Pieces suck. Speaking of, so on to Hoffler Day. So he's titled it Draft Science Questions. Now these questions, I knew before I played the video, I said, oh, here just comes more nonsensical, useless minutia. So regular physics basically just defines things based on their effect, right? They can't even weigh protons. Not only do they not know how they're constructed, beyond some vague notion that, well, it's got to take 4 3/4 down quarks and 3 strange quarks. But they don't have any clear picture. There's no diagram explaining exactly how protons inside function or any of that kind of stuff. And yet he's demanding from me that I can't have a theory of general physics without that explanation. I mean, the double standard is insane. It's an insanely insipid double standard. It can only mean that, oh, well, here we go again, another fanatic, right, who's going to sit there and just make 2 standards. God can create in mysterious ways, but nothing else can happen that's mysterious. If nature did it, it can't be mysterious. We have to know everything about it. That kind of thing. I mean, it's just a preposterous double standard. Anyway. So, on to the fun. So, general relativity coming up in a moment. So I'll speed it up.
Okay. Thought I'd post some questions for in random science. Perhaps you'll answer. I have 2 in mind. There should be more.
Yeah, whatever. Great. I really appreciate the effort you put in. You know,
First question is to save me the trouble of trying to explain it.
yeah, why don't you explain it? It's okay. You know, the trouble has to be worth it, because it's one of the most preposterous and extraneous things you know, science has ever proposed, this whole idea of warping time and space. So why don't you explain how it gets warped? Yeah, that would be swell, thanks. I mean, the 60 symbols explanation was pretty much convoluted bullshit, so you might as well give it a shot.
Because I thought to explain it, and then I thought maybe he actually knows, and if he knows, it's fine. But right, so the question is about special relativity, the whole firing a laser beam across the spaceship, whether it hits the hole, whether it goes into the future, etc., etc.
Yeah, etc., etc. Right, and I made probably 15 videos on just that subject alone, going through all of these stupid propositions about what the rules are for photons.
The amendment says this is a paradox. The question is, do you know how special relativity resolves the paradox as you...
Yes, I'm saying it doesn't resolve it. That's why I'm still calling it a paradox. The resolution doesn't solve the problem. You can fix it for one observer by fucking the game, and you can fix it with the other one by fucking the game, but you can't fuck it the same way for both of them. So that's the paradox. You can't have it both ways. I'm saying the outside observer is going to see the light move forward faster than the speed of light, and there's nothing else that's going to be there. That's it. That's what he's going to see, and he can't. He's not allowed to see that. Period.
You see it. Namely, it doesn't assert that it goes faster than. There still is a constancy in the speed of light.
Okay, so, well, I'll let him finish, and then I'll go through one more effort to explain why all of this crap can't work.
Distances are shortened, time slows.
Right, distances are shortened. Again, they're not shortened enough, because any distance that isn't this line, any turn this way, going against a parallel surface, any turn, any, is a longer line. So it doesn't matter how short you make, how much you're getting length contracted, you can't contract yourself out of the longer line. Sorry, I didn't mean to get into the particulars till he finishes this segment of bullshit.
And then everything works out for the people in the spaceship.
Works out for the people in the spaceship. We're not talking about what works out for the people in the spaceship. We're talking about what works as a diagram. And is there any way to physically draw it where it works? And there isn't.
One way, and from the people outside of the spaceship works out and everything, and there is no paradox except in that.
Well, like I said, I haven't seen 60 symbols handle the person outside having no paradox, because basically he concedes, yes, it goes faster than the speed of light, but time dilation, I mean, it's going slower than the speed of light. It doesn't get to the frickin' destination, but because of time dilation, he saw it get there quicker.
You know, clocks break. The other question.
Okay, yes, clocks break. Again, what would that have to do with whether a photon gets to the future or not? Nothing. Your broken clocks have nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing. Alright, I have to pick up the camera. Oh, shit. All this work I have to do. Alright. So here's my context. There's two things involved here. First thing is to understand that when they decided to do this frame stuff, it was based on material objects and our common understanding of these material objects. So you're on a train, you're going 70 miles an hour, maybe 150 miles an hour, and you throw a tennis ball back and forth across the train. We see the tennis ball just do one thing, just going back and forth. But we know, okay, when you're informed, that what the ball's really doing is zigzagging. It's going a much longer distance, and it's moving much faster. It's going actually as fast as the train plus extra. So if the train's going 250 miles an hour and you're throwing the tennis ball back and forth 30 miles an hour, the ball's going a hell of a lot faster than anything you're noticing. Alright? In the real world. In real space. It's traveling a lot more distance, 3 times the distance you're seeing. 4 times the distance you're seeing. 5 times the distance you're seeing. A lot more distance, and it's doing it a lot faster than you're seeing. And that's what we know. Now, that's the facts. Now, you can frame that. You can say, that's a relativistic frame. And the frame doesn't mean anything. Because we know if the tennis ball flew off the train, we know it would go its real speed, which would be 248 miles an hour, and that it would be going in this bizarre vector from one person throwing it. Obviously, we're not doing both people. We're just doing one person throws it. When he throws it, he doesn't really throw it at the other guy. He's throwing it way in the future. So you think you're throwing it perpendicular, but the ball's actually going some other vector. And you'll see that if the window's open and the guy misses, you'll see the fact that the ball's actually going to hit things that aren't perpendicular. Yeah. At the moment you threw it. It's going to hit something much further into the future. So if you want to hit something on purpose outside the train, you have to throw it into the past. You have to throw it backward to get to hit something perpendicular to you. Or if you want to hit something that's coming at you, you have to throw it some point behind where that thing is. Alright, so you can make all the frames you want and no harm. I have no problem. Go ahead, call that a frame, a relativistic frame. And nothing, it doesn't do any harm. There's nobody saying that the tennis ball stops going 200, it doesn't go a crooked path when it leaves the train, and it doesn't hit with the impact of a tennis, like a tree. It doesn't hit it with an impact of something going 240 miles an hour rather than one going 30 miles an hour. Everybody could agree. So yes, the tennis ball is not going to hit the tree going 30 miles an hour. It's not going to hit the ball. It's not going to hit the tree going the speed I threw it. It's going to hit the tree going the speed of the train, plus a little extra. The faster thing. So I illustrate that with this simple hypotenuse argument. Okay, if you were going to graph this crap, you know, the graph is you got your one direction this way, one direction this way. You say, okay, it's 230 this way, so that's this line, and then it's only 30 this way, so that would only be this line. This is the point where it intersects. You draw the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is longer than either one of those lines. So, yes, it's 240 miles an hour or something instead of 230. Done. So the argument is, if I made a rule that tennis balls can only go 50 miles an hour, or some number, how does that work then? Is it possible for me to throw the tennis ball on the train moving 250 miles an hour and have it go back and forth? It's not possible because the train's already moving faster than the tennis ball. So you're done. You're finished. You're fucked. So now we're just going to talk about, well, is it possible if I make the speed limit 500 miles an hour? Well, if I make the speed limit 500 miles an hour, I'm okay because I can just make the tennis ball go slower. You know, it still goes 240, and that's within the limits. Well, we know that's sort of cheating this argument, right? That's just playing a game by just going under the problem scenario. So anyway, so the point is all this frame stuff was basically invented without acknowledging, certainly Galileo had no idea, that light had a constant speed. So, and that it had a speed. Galileo probably thought it was instantaneous. So, you know, it creates this problem of the thought experiment. What do you do with something that has a constant speed? How does something with a constant speed, so the speed that I'm going to throw it somewhere is already going to be its maximum speed, and it can't do this other speed, the thing where the train's moving 230 miles an hour. There's no way to add the two speeds. There's no, this doesn't work anymore. You can't do this. This is impossible. So I'm just saying, how is this possible that you're going to change these rules now to say that this one thing can do this special thing, where it can actually do this line into the future. It can actually move. So we're throwing it back and forth, but it really moves this way when I throw it. So when I think I'm throwing it this way, it's actually going this way. I mean, we get that, right? I mean, the real tennis ball, this is what it's going to do on the train going 230 miles an hour. I'm going to throw it this way. Think, I really threw it this way because it got to this guy in the future. Well, we know now, light, something moving at constant speed can't do that because this requires acceleration. This requires an increase in velocity. And a photon can't increase its velocity. So how can it possibly traverse that line in the required faster speed? It can't get to this point. It can't get here. There's no time it can use to get here. So anyway, so this whole thing is about the fact that they invented this idea of relativity by Piro's own testimony before they even knew the speed of light, and before they knew they would have to account for things that have a constant speed, and that things with a constant speed cannot possibly do this. They can't function as if we don't know. They can't just go back and forth on the train like we just don't realize we're going 230 miles an hour. The photon can't play by that rule. Alright, well that's probably enough of this. But that's what this is all about. They just won't concede that you can't have the same rules for material items that acquire numerous velocities and convert them, numerous vectors, directions, thrown this way, train this way, vector. Things doing that, photons can't do that because it can't combine speeds, can't combine momentums. So you can't have a rule that fits both. Explain how you do, like I said, if I make the photons out of matter, quote unquote, how could it happen? I'm just saying, there's no way it can. There's no way you can make a material thing with a constant speed and then say it went to the future, it went this longer line. Can't do the longer line. You can't add to its speed. It can't add the two speeds in the first place. Yeah, I've already said it. There's no way to add the speeds. Photons can't add momentums. And I mean add in the vector sense. In the vector sense, it isn't adding 30 plus 230. It's adding the dimensional change, which just ends up being the highest number plus 5 or 10%. All right.
Drag that question out a bit longer, I thought. Okay, so the other question is what's the status?
Yeah, well, let me ask you a question. Did you realize how obnoxious and rude you are? Do you have any realization just how stupid looking you are and how ugly you are and how much you smell? Do you realize? Or do I have to explain it to you? Do I explain how that's rude? You don't realize how rude you are? I have to explain it to you again.
Status of your theory on matter.
Let me slow this part down because he's just going to say something so, it's just so fucking, it's such bullshit. I mean, it's insipid, expectation of detail. I mean, and again, in the context of how I've cut it down to so few parts, and and yet he'll do this bullshit.
Do you have one? It seems to me, you mulled around with the idea of swirling fish and such, but then I see you say maybe they're locked together like arrows and things. And is it fair to say that you don't actually have a theory of aggregate matter?
I don't have a theory of the quantum matter in the sense that it could just be a spark. It could be a little star, quanta. It could be anything. All it has is properties. All I'm required to do is define its properties. I'm not required to give you some sort of thing that creates those properties, in the sense that I don't have to say whether it's made out of brick, or whether it's made out of cement, or whether it's made out of titanium. All of that detail is irrelevant. What I have come, what I have basically stated from the very beginning, and what I'm stating now, I suppose more emphatically, all right, I'll explain it one more way, is that the matter is a container. Okay, so the electron is a little container, and the container interacts with the rest of the universe a certain way. So I've cut that down to this simple polarization argument. Something, when you're an electron, you're black stuff. The black stuff says, okay, if you hit me with a black, it's just a reflection. Okay, I get pushed a little this way, one notch, and I send back the little black thing. If it's a red thing, then it sort of goes in, it pushes me a little forward, and it moves me left, right, it changes the other perpendicular dimension. It shoots something out the perpendicular dimension. The reflection leaves perpendicularly. There. That's it. Done with properties. And basically I'm arguing, well, how do I explain those properties? Well, my explanation for those properties is that there's this matter stuff, which could be made out of the quanta. Maybe not. Maybe it is. I'm saying, well, you can theoretically do it by just saying it's stuck. So in a sense that it's trapped. And you can trap things in circles. You can trap things by constant force from the outside, as I've pointed out. So it's an arrangement of equality that doesn't get free of its local field. So you could almost argue, in that sense, it's a local field. And so if you made it out of a million things, it's that the field is so local, it's self-sustaining, in the sense that no irregularity can break the mechanism, so it just keeps on swirling or whatever it's doing. But I don't want to get into all the different ways you can create something that once it starts cycling, it can't be stopped. So once it's almost like having an unwound wheel, and how at different rates or different velocities, the bump in the wheel becomes invisible. You'll never hear it. You'll never see an effect of it. But at some other frequency, the bounce is revealed, the defect is revealed, and the whole thing flies apart. So you can have a defect that's just recycled, that creates a nuance in the motion that completely isolates the problem. It bounces up, and then the other side bounces down at just the right, and so you never know it's there. Anyway, something like that. Anyway, so the simple argument is that these electrons are made out of stuff going in the 3 dimensions. So there's stuff going, let's just say, forward and back. There's stuff going left and right, and there's stuff going the other dimension. And it's equal. So it has, say, 4 of each, or whatever the number would be. And what happens is you make these exchanges with the environment, and what happens is if you go in with a red into the black, what it will do is it'll take one of the 4s going left and right, and it'll say cut that down to 3 going this direction. Well, it's both sides. You always have to count it both ways, but I'm just using 4 for the dimensions, but let's say the dimensions represent 8, because there's 2 ways in each dimension. I mean 6. Shit. So there's real 6 paths you can take. So anyway, yes, what you end up doing is you kill a 3, and what you're really doing is switching it for a 5 here. So you've added 1 going this way, you subtracted a 3 going this way, but it'll all even out in the end. So this will be fixed later, by something adding this piece will come in this way. It'll add a, well, it has to come in this way actually, and it'll make this back up to a 4, and then it'll take away from one of these other dimensions. But it's the electron is just like a little adding machine. It just adds up what it has perpendicularly released, so to speak, and keeps a toll of, and that toll ends up being its momentum. And as I pointed out, the balance in the system is that whatever imbalances it has in a direction, so if I have 7 things going this way and only 3 going down, as I pointed out, you can understand that an even pressure from the sides, okay, will likely hit more 7 than it'll hit 3. So the 7s would automatically, by probabilistic rules, get wiped out. You know, the 7 going this way are more likely to be converted into a 3. And, I mean, well, you know, as I've stated, it has to be converted this way first and then converted the other way. But I'm just saying you'll knock the 7 down to a 6, and then you'll have only a 6 to 3 imbalance. But it balances what the thing seeks. And so that's all it's doing. So that's the basic mechanism. Now there's so many ways you could describe how those tons got trapped in there. And that the real point is that the thing does have a momentum. I mean, it gets one, it can have one, and it has to be made out of the stuff inside of it. It doesn't have a carrier ton that pushes it around. It has to actually have a mechanism inside of itself that makes that realizable. So that's why I'm saying it has to be made out of something moving already that's trapped. The force liberates the electron. It doesn't maintain its momentum. So the electron has to have a locomotion mechanism built into it. It's not a dead object. There's no such thing as real momentum, as I'm trying to point out in the traditional notion of this pen just moves because I threw it through space and it just keeps going forever. My point is, nothing goes forever for no reason. It has to constantly be pushed. And the reason why something keeps going is because it has force inside of it and it's not releasing it. Alright, so for an electron to move, it sort of has to maintain force. But see, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, because it could be theoretically correct that electrons do have to be constantly pushed, that they never really have anything called momentum, and they're only moving because there's still force behind them that still hasn't gone through them yet. But I guess you'd still have to have a timing argument that somehow it takes time for the electron to move, because the force would go through it very quickly. I mean, they're very short electrons, very tiny, so the force would get through it very quickly, the speed of light. And obviously electrons aren't moving the speed of light. So there has to be something, there's either something that makes the force slow down as it goes through an electron, or the electron has to have its carrying force already. And it's just that it's carrying a balance in force, in the sense that it's carrying force going in both directions, and it only goes in one of those directions when there's an imbalance in those two. So as I pointed out, it could be explained that it is like you can almost think of it as a membrane. If you could put a membrane around, say there was fish, and the fish moved in the 3 dimensions and they all moved the same speed, and I put a membrane around 20 fish that were evenly going in these different directions. You can get the idea that the fish would bounce off the membrane and go the other way, and then bounce off the membrane and go the other way. and that it would be even in terms of the blob wouldn't go anywhere. So in a sense, the outside pressure is like a membrane. So you could get rid of the membrane and just think of the outside pressure as constantly forcing the fish to bounce back. And so you're really just talking about a loosely configured thing that we're calling this electron, that just happens to contain a bunch of force going in all directions, essentially, or many directions. But they're constantly getting forced back and forth by the even pressure. And so when the pressure becomes uneven, the blob moves in the direction of the unevenness. But anyway, this detail, I think, is unnecessary to the big picture of the theory. And again, this call gross duplicity on your part, for you don't have the expectation that Einstein answer these questions. What other part of physics have you demanded this detail from? I don't see you saying, I don't have an opinion on physics until they answer these questions. Where'd you do that? You tend to believe their bullshit. Bent space, what's that made out of? How do you do that? No, you don't require nothing. And you're going to harass me for this minutia when I'm giving you such a clear and simple description of the properties and its function. I mean, it just filtering polarization, essentially. I've cut its function down to such a simple function. And yet you're still demanding I tell you exactly how red the bricks are that are inside of it. I mean, fuck. You can't see how this could only be received by me as obnoxious distraction.
And that being so, you've still got essentially all you have is your existing claims about Lesage gravity.
So, an amazing statement, right? First, my existing claims aren't about Lesage gravity, as I've already pointed out so many times. And as already has been pointed out, is the theory went way beyond just Lesage gravity. It's now explained magnetism. It's explaining charge on particles. It's explaining time dilation. So what do you mean all I have is? No, and even if it was just Lesage gravity, I obviously fixed that because I fixed this huge velocity problem, which was the momentum problem, by explaining how, well, if you're converting all your stuff to stuff moving forward, and the head-on collisions are the most irrelevant collision possible, then, you're not going to have too much problem going through things you're hitting. Because you're essentially getting thinner and thinner. You're getting more and more invisible as you go faster and faster to the things you're hitting. I mean, and so just another, what's the point of that? And again, what's your expectation of how I would respond to such a disgusting trivialization of a unification theory? Just completely deny the existence of the unification part, deny the existence of all the elements that it explains and covers, how it explains so many parts of physics. I mean, just an amazing bit of petty shit.
Right. Another question is it still a firm belief that that no matter, no structure, which constitutes matter, electron, proton, whatever, actually moves in its entirety, retaining all its constituent parts from this position to this position?
Yeah, well, was basically just covered in a sense that I'm not sure what would be required. My argument was about sustained momentum. You can't give an electron momentum in the sense of you can't make it go 50 miles an hour and it just keeps going 50 miles an hour until something hits it. The argument is that the field energy is still hitting it from the sides, and that field energy is going to kill the imbalance. So the basic structure of the field energy is it doesn't like imbalance, and it's going to seek balance. It's going to force balance to be found. It's going to force you to be balanced. So only the combination of electrons and protons can capture force, and you have to actually capture quanta moving in an imbalanced percentage. More of them going this way than going this way, for example, to maintain a velocity. So you have to trap them between electrons and protons, or electrons and electrons, and you have to collect more going one way than you collect going the other way. And as I explained, you can do that by having 4 electrons that hold force all going this way, and only have 2 electrons on this side going that way, and then you would have twice as much quanta going one way as you have going the other way, which means twice as much force, which means you will rotate into a velocity. But protons and electrons haven't got any mechanism to convert all of their bits into bits moving one way, or most of their bits into bits moving one way. And if they did, they still couldn't maintain it, because the field energy would kill it by the probabilistic rules.
In actual fact happens is when
I mean, this got interesting because I did think of another thing. You know, sometimes you see in those little cloud chamber doodars, you see a little electron thing that does this kind of thing. And I was thinking about that because it gets to this whole perpendicular argument. So the idea would be is this is a negatively charged electron, and that there was a positive charge here that it came in contact with. So the trick would be is that red is being blocked by the positive charge. So it's not getting hit by red going this way. It's getting hit by more red coming from this side. And what's the implications of getting hit by more red for a black? Well, the implications are is that the force, the red, is going to leave perpendicularly. So the red comes in, it goes out this way, and the electron is going to end up sacrificing one of its, it's going to end up collecting an arrow going this way. So it's essentially going to release something going maybe this way or that way, and it's going to keep something going this way, but it doesn't really collect and keep, it just changes its calculation, its possession. So it's now going to possess an extra arrow going this way, and it's going to give away one going this way, let's say, and so the tendency is going to be that it's going to get pushed like an orbit almost into the proton. So I'm just saying, I did think of that today, that it does fit what electrons, when electrons go in just one way, they're doing it because they're in the field of something that has a positive charge. They're in the shadow of something that has a positive charge.
when a particle, I wish you had a ball, but when a body A moves to from position 1 to position 2, that it's got all new constituent parts. So what's happening is, I think as you once put, kind of a shadow of itself is travelling.
Yeah, well, this is the kind of minutia that it's really, it's fine if you want to have a conversation about these little parts when no one's even accepted the theory. So I'm just saying, to get into the, because to me it's an interesting conversation about getting into the whole idea of pattern, which the electrons could just be a pattern, and it's just the quanta move through it, and it's just the pattern that's moving, that there is no real physical that it's not real quanta that's moving it. It's just the identity of the quanta that's moving. So, I mean, well, look, I mean, I've done previous videos on that, and so I don't want to confuse trying to explain the subject by getting into the layer one step deeper, you know, where you might realize that if that all you're exchanging, well, pattern's a good way to say it, but yeah, let's not get into it. I mean, I don't want to do that now. I mean, I don't think it's to my purposes to get into the much more abstract conversation about duplicating the physical phenomenon by just converting everything into a pattern. But yes, you could do that. It seems theoretically sensible, that kind of speculation.
Is that the position of your theory? And if so, well, the next question would be
Look, I just reiterate, I've cut the properties down to their simplest, to a very elemental description. The electron absorbs and reflects, I'm using these words, when, yes, in truth, it's not really possessing it. It's just possessing the identity. And it doesn't matter who the black arrow is, it's just black arrow, so to speak. How it's exchanged. So whether the external pressure, whether there's anything called a real reflection, it just doesn't matter. Again, how would you even tell the difference? You know, in the kinetic scenario, you know, two things hit each other. You know, theoretically, does this one go through this one, and this one go through that one, or did they really reflect? I just don't think it's a question that's vital to the recognizing that the end result is one thing leaves going this way and one thing leaves going that way, which is exactly what the scenario was when they met. One thing was going this way and one thing was going that way.
the sea of particles of quanta that inhabits empty space is generally statistically random, and
well, that's how it started, let's say, but clearly it has these lumps in it now, so I mean it's clearly deformed. So, you know, I mean, I'm saying it's random. I can't say for sure it's exactly perfectly random. It might be egg-shaped. It might be blah, blah, blah shaped. It could be lots of different shapes. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle.
or you'll get occasional concentrations and rarefications, and if that's the case, then how can an object pass through a brief or an area of rarefication, statistical rarefication?
Well, like I said, I would say there's no statistical rarefication that would ever be big enough to be an obstacle. So there'd be no black holes or anything like that. You're not going to have. It's like it's so dense. I mean, I can't even. You don't understand this. I mean, if you were to quantize gravity, you can understand it. We can't comprehend a candle flame worth of photons. And we're talking about something maybe 1 trillion times more dense than that in terms of the quanta involved. The amount of pressure it's capable of exerting is insane. So it's obviously dense as hell. And for you to say there's all of a sudden a big, huge thing that's just a random eccentricity. There'll never be one that big. There can only be tiny, tiny random vibrations. The limit on how eccentric the field could get on its own would probably be just 2 photons width or something. It'd be a small, tiny thing. And only a photon would be affected by it. So one photon getting wiped out, if I pull one out of the universe tomorrow, it's not going to make a big loud sound. So it's not going to fuck everything up. So it doesn't mean anything. Clearly what's interesting is the idea that what you have in one thing moving, matter, is the collection of more stuff going this way, more pattern going that way, if you have something moving in space. And the rational argument would be there's some other place in space where something's going this way. But this thing can be broken into 5,000 little pins going all kinds of vectors that have a component of that way. So the force going this way is reciprocal. Its anti-particle could be in the form of a billion things going any one of those vector directions. Billions of them. So it's not in the same form, the imbalance anymore. And it could be at different ends of the universe. More likely, though, it's caught in a local field, which makes it more sensible that so many things come back to haunt us, so to speak. Hoisted on your own petard. Those cliches about, if you set that up, if you do it, it's going to come back and get you. The circular kind of arguments, and it's sort of like that, because everything you do in this world, so to speak, physically, is still caught in a local field for quite a while. It doesn't get very far away very fast, generally speaking, because it's reflecting back off things. So you don't get clear for a while. The local environment is likely to balance you sooner than later. Yeah, that might be the way to say it.
And also, I guess, if that's the case, that there's no seemingly worry about the speed of the transmission. Yeah, it's frictionless, and how would you calculate the limit on the speed of travel in such a medium? I think
well, again, there's no medium, there's just quanta, and as I pointed out, the limit's always the speed of light, and the more matter you have it going the wrong way in your school of fish, the more fish you have not going this way, that's how much not going the speed of light you are. So unless all your fish are going the same way, that defines how much less than the speed of light you're going and how much matter you are. So the more you have lots of fish going different ways, the more material you are. And the less you have matter, fish going in all directions, the less you are matter and just a ray of light.
Be like a wave equation, and you would have a natural limit to the speed of any object within a certain statistical density.
Well, again, that's why I tried to describe the objects as being fundamentally made out of the quanta. So it's just a simple proportion argument. The more of your fish going one way, the more you are force. I mean, I say light, but force. So if all your fish are going one way, they're going the speed of light, and you're a force. You're a blob of force. You're not matter anymore. What's so complicated? And the more fish that aren't going that way, the more material you are.
Of that nature. Anyway, so there's some questions for you to ponder over and update, perhaps make a new summary of the current position of, in Mendon physics.
Yes, well, I have made lots of videos doing the overview thing, And I just don't know if it's fruitful, because I think there's enough chapters where you just can't do it justice to somebody who's going to learn it for the first time by just saying something simple like the fish analogy. You have to go a little deeper to get the point. You have to start with the push-pull thing, and then start with the, look, they didn't consider particle gravity because they couldn't account for this thickness problem, an ether problem. It creates an ether problem, drag. And yeah, you can get rid of that. You know, it's not catastrophic. It is something that can be overcome with an explanation of a mechanism that allows it to be not a problem. You can fix this. It works. But yeah, you can't explain it too quickly, because people hang on the wrong word, one misplaced word, and they say, well, what do you mean fish can go all kinds of different speeds? You know, or they say something like elastic, and you say, no, you can't think it. Nothing's elastic. No, bing, 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 bing. No elastic. No boing. Just bing, bing. Or something like that. Anyway, till next time. And such. Pretty much. I mean, time's up, so no point in dragging it out. Camera only records for a little over an hour at best, so no point in pushing it.